Hey there folks, welcome back to the channel. So I haven't done one of these in this format in a little while. Thought I would bring back the format to bring a couple of things forward. Not necessarily because they needed to be brought your attention that desperately. One of them is kind of a rehash on something we've already talked about. Another one is something that's recent, but I had a little bit of fun with, and I thought I would bring it forward and explain a couple of things that I think are kind of can be kind of linked a little bit to sports cards. It's more of an in general kind of market thing, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about it. Plus, it's my first excuse to do one of these videos in a while, as I said. And also, come on, I got my little AEW scarf there, so bringing that into the channel. Anyway, maybe that'll be my wrestling watching scarf. I just got this in the mail today, so I thought I'd put it on. Anyway, so two videos that I want to talk about, and I'll quickly bring them up on the screen. I will play a couple of clips of the second set for you. But I want to focus my attention a little bit more on the second half of it, but I do want to bring this to your attention a little bit, to a certain degree. And what I'll do is I'll do the little share screen. Okay, through the magic of editing, we just snapped ourselves into position. So here we are. So this is fraud exposed in TCGs and other collectibles. So like I said, these videos kind of focus on collectible card games a little bit, but there are some kind of analogies we can draw to it. So the specific focus of this video, and that is from the channel F.A. Bled Hunters. So this is related to Flesh and Blood. Basically a collectible card game. You don't need to know anything about the card game to understand the context of the videos or why this is relevant. The reason I wanted to bring this one to your attention is in case you're interested. This is mostly for people that are less familiar, more than the people who are, not about collectible card games, but about our good friends at PWCC. Now, just so that I'm not talking about both sides of my mouth, I did say a couple of different times, and I also said when I was on Sports Card Anonymous, that I'm a big fan of additional platforms. And that remains true. And that even includes PWCC because I think there is some value they can provide to the hobby. That being said, we should not sweep under the rug the fact that they have been implicated over time, including through eBay, of shill bidding practices. Now, again, I remind everybody that eBay is not blameless in this. eBay did allow this to go on for possibly years, allegedly, and they certainly haven't kicked shill bidding off of their platform. But PWCC was certainly a beneficiary and a recipient of it, and they've had a lot of shadiness in their track record to be something that we need to bear in mind. Just because I'm saying we need additional platforms and PWCC can potentially provide one, because I don't want eBay to continue to have as much market dominance as it's had. For me, additional platforms that take some of the shine off eBay and push them to get better is a good thing. And that includes even PWCC. They can be useful in this context. But that doesn't mean we ignore the fact that they've got some issues. They've got some skeletons in their closet, and we need to be reminded. So the gentleman on here included some anecdotal evidence and some things that he's had some dealings with PWCC in the past. Specifically, he had to bring his lawyers into it as pertaining to some shill bidding on some auctions he was trying to win that bumped up the price that he would have to pay on it, and he pushed back on them. And there's quite a bit included in the story, and he also references, of course, the eBay kicking PWCC off. A lot of his stories pertain to the beginning of 2020, but so it's not brand new, but it also isn't from years and years and years ago. So it's one of those things where PWCC has been investigated a number of times. They've got some pending lawsuit. They've had some other questions brought up about them about different shill bidding things. So just bear in mind that PWCC does have a little bit of a murky track record, and it's good to remind people. So this video, like the other ones I'm going to reference on this video here, I will include links in the description for you so you can check it out. This one's about 25 minutes. The first chunk of it in particular, he talks about his own story as pertaining to PWCC. So if you're interested, you can definitely check it out. I think it's worthwhile to take a look if you're less familiar with PWCC's dubious track record. If you are, it's just going to be more of the same for you, but it just gives you a more personalized story since it is directly him speaking of his own experience. Now, this is the one that I was looking forward to having a little bit of fun with. So this is the one that I want to share with you. I'm not going to play the whole video. I'm going to play a little clip of it. And I did speed it up just a little bit just so that we could get through the section that I want to include. So I'll include a couple of snippets of two videos here. So this is Rudy from Alpha Investments. So Alpha Investments is the YouTube channel. And Alpha Investments is pertaining to basically a business that does a lot of wholesaling with Magic the Gathering and other collectible card games, including Flesh and Blood, which I referenced a little bit in the first video that I was talking about. So a little bit of a Flesh and Blood doubleheader here. Again, you don't need to know anything about the game. That's not important. That's not the key point of this. The thing that's interesting for me a lot of times, and the reason I enjoy looking at Alpha Investments, I have collected some Magic the Gathering cards in the past, but I don't really actively collect them. There is a set that I'm mostly done that I'll probably try to get the singles for to finish that up. But outside of that, I don't actively collect, and I don't really actively play anymore. I did play a little bit here and there at different times, but I do enjoy it. And I do enjoy keeping an eye on it from a distance because it still interests me from the perspective of both collecting and the game itself. But it's one of those things where a lot of my main fun that I have with the whole Alpha Investments channel is that in addition to talking through the actual sets and things like that, and doing the things that you would do to promote your own business and do a lot of that, is that Rudy from Alpha Investments likes to do a lot of videos where he'll talk about different economics aspects of it. And I believe I've referenced his channel before. He did a video not long ago where he basically did an explanation on bonds, because he has in his background, he was a Wall Street trader. So he does have an understanding of a lot of the economics and, things like bonds and valuating different assets and doing all that, because he operates his business as well. So something you have to bear in mind. Now, really important thing. Day to day, a lot of the videos may not be of interest to a lot of folks because a lot of them are really specific on these collectible card games. So I'm making that clear from the start. I'm giving you two videos that are complements of each other. So the first one is the one that is the explanation for something he's about to do that I'm going to explain in a second. And the second one is the results of that video. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that I enjoy little market experiments, especially ones that do have some, that do pertain and do in some ways relate to other things that are happening in the rest of the collectible fields. So just because, again, you don't need to know anything about Flesh and Blood or Magic the Gathering or collectible card games in general. You could be fully sports cards, and it doesn't matter. A lot of the concepts do still apply, and I'll give you some analogies that may help illustrate this point a little bit more. But I'll say quickly a couple of bullet points about this. So basically what he decided to do, and this is what this video pertains to, this is 24 hours notice. Let's play a game. So let me explain what the game that he's describing is. So basically, that Flesh and Blood game I referred to earlier, he operates as kind of a wholesaler with a store and everything. So he has the ability to buy allocations of different things. And part of his business model is to buy a lot of product and then resell it in various avenues, including through a Patreon that he has, where people who have been able to get in, and it allows them to buy some of these boxes at wholesale prices. He's made his money through a lot of these variety of different ways by getting a lot of inventory cheap, and he hoards certain types of inventory, and as the value of it goes up, he resells it. He's a reseller. That's what he does. That's the business. But he's built himself up quite a following as far as people who like him and as far as people who hate him. Some people describe him as kind of a wolf of Wall Street of, the collectible card game field, Magic the Gathering and such. But it's kind of funny is that basically this polarizing persona is part of what has helped him, the channel grow. It's part of what has helped his business grow. And then specifically pertaining to this moment, when he's doing this specific market game, if you will, the fact that he's so polarizing, the fact that some people don't like him, plays directly into the model that he's going to describe. And then the reason I enjoy it is because this first video basically outlines exactly what it is. It's not really hiding from anybody. So it's one of those things where you're making perfectly clear what it is. In this video, part of the description, I'm not going to rehash all the points in the video, but the short version is, basically, since he was an early adopter and supporter of the game Flesh and Blood, the creator appreciated his his help early on in it by believing in the game, and then he basically bestowed upon him access to 1,500 cards that bear a resemblance to him, that are basically promo cards. Effectively, they're promo cards based on like something that was in one of his older videos. So it's a little bit of a meme that was turned into a card that was created by it. So he has about 1,500 of those. So he created a package, including a fancy box and then some art cards go inside that are from the game designers themselves, and then the promo card as well. So they put together this little package. And what they're doing is, describing that he's going to be selling this for a 24-hour period. This has already happened. So I'm not telling you this because I'm telling you to go off and buy something. It's already done. What I wanted to talk about, though, is the lead-in and then the results, and then kind of how it's kind of an interesting discussion because it plays into the sports card side of it too. But the bottom line is, the initial run-up to the game, a lot of people didn't believe in it. Collectible card games come and go. 3 of the 5 major distributors out there basically rejected it, didn't bother with it. So those that were supportive got a lot of support back from the game, and the game has taken off as far as a secondary market values. A lot of people are upset about that because people who want to play the game want to be able to play it inexpensively. So as the price of that go up, but anybody who knows the history of collectible card games, even the game like a Magic that has been around for so long, since 1993, they had those issues too. The first couple of runs, the first couple of issues, alpha, beta, and a couple of those early sets are super valuable today because they had relatively limited print runs compared to the player base that wanted to play it. That's supply and demand economics in a nutshell. Really, that's all it is. But this is intentionally creating a scarcity, and with the full knowledge that it's going to get a polarizing response. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Rudy explain a little bit about it, including the price point and a couple of other things. So like I said, I'll play a little bit of this for you, and then I'll play a little bit of the aftermath video talking about what happened.
And we had to determine, okay, I'm not going to hand pick which couple hundred patrons I should be allowed to offer the product to them. Oh, and before we go any further, it's $1,000. No more, no less. $999.69 just for the washer and dryer. I haven't decided if we're going to do a limit 1 or 2. The price is high on purpose to discourage purchasing and to create anger and negativity, and so that people would spread and discuss this far and wide and really be upset about it. That is the engineering of this product. It is a publicity stunt. It is designed to make people who already dislike me and Flesh and Blood become very upset and be polarized. That is the objective here. Now, by setting the price at $1,000, and by the way, the $2,000 price point is if you buy two. It's just funny that way. So the objective here is to allow the patrons to decide what the card is worth. Now, this is a self-balancing game we're all going to play here. Now, those of you who are not a patron, you're watching, you get to see the results in the open market. So this is the way it works, folks. It's expensive. Most people are not going to buy. I do not expect it to sell out. My instinct, I think a couple hundred copies are going to sell in the market, and the rest of them will be destroyed. Now, original idea was to put them through the paper shredder, like James had done originally with the hearts, but I kind of like the idea of laying them out and kind of burning them, like putting lighter fluid on them and letting it burn. I thought it'd be more poetic. And then after that, once they dry and air out and they'll let it sit for a while, I'm going to have them professionally framed of all the burnt scrap pieces with a plate and the date and the story of all this. That's the objective. Now here's where the kicker gets really fun. The more the patrons believe this is a scam, overpriced ripoff, the less they will buy. The less they will buy, the less cards will exist in the world. This is a self-balancing, almost a self-fulfilling direction. So essentially, let's pretend option A. Only 100 patrons buy the card. They pay me $1,000, they pay me $100,000. Great. Well, before shipping fees, fraud, people are going to steal, return, disputes, whatever. So let's say that happens. Okay? That means the other approximate 1,400 copies will be burned and destroyed, and those lucky 100 people are going to have a very, very rare and valuable card. Interesting, huh? Full disclosure, I do plan on keeping 10 copies for myself, family, and my son. Just to let everybody know. Now, the next thing is, most likely scenario, a couple hundred sell, maybe even 500 sell. Great. Thanks for the money. Put into the game, can expand. The packaging alone, the custom packaging and designing of the art cards and things like that, cost about $10,000. Gave James an extra $6,000. So about $16,000 was the packaging, air freight, because again, the shipping container logistics world's a disaster. So the packaging alone, I paid Legendary Studios $16,000 just for the packaging. Now, what is going to happen? That's what I want to know. What are the patrons who do purchase and take a leap of faith, or jump into the pool of being scammed, or make a lot of money? What is the card worth? I don't know. And I'm going to let them decide. I encourage the patrons who want it and believe in the game and believe in something rare to buy two of them. And I encourage them to flip the other one. I want to see the market fight. Now, let's pretend for that Black Swan event, maybe they all buy. Maybe everyone gets crazy and there's so much money sloshing around and some of the patrons really are doctors, surgeons. They got so much money, they're just blowing it. Maybe we do sell all 1,500. Maybe it actually runs out. I don't know. But on the sale of the patrons, I'm going to launch the sale tomorrow night, which is Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Central Time. Eastern specific time, as they say on Family Guy. Specifically Eastern. Sorry, no me, serious video. And at that time, we're going to run the sale. I'm not going to say any messages or any data from the point the sale launches. Not if it sells half, 20%, 50%. There will be no updates on the sale until either A, the sale and the card completely sells out, or B, 24 hours and 1 minute goes by and I cut it off. Once the sale comes to an end, no further cards will ever be placed into circulation, and the cards, the remainder, will be destroyed, and I will send out a message letting people know exactly how many sold, and then you get to watch the remainder of the brick laid across the grill. So the question is, ladies and gentlemen, what's the card worth? How many patrons will buy? How many patrons will get scammed? And is the card really only worth $1? The Magic community states that all cardboard are just game pieces. All new game pieces should remain cheap. Legend Story Studios feels the same way, but that's why they have Unlimited Edition. That's why Cold Foils and First Edition is segregated from Unlimited. So the question is, how many people will be upset? How many threats will I get? And how will the game unfold? And that's, ladies and gentlemen, is what is about to happen. And boy, do I cannot wait to see the comment section. And I cannot wait to see people's reaction. Because it's going to be a fucking glorious, glorious, just battle of the Spartans. And it's going to make you feel alive. And I hope this video drives an emotional response from you. The question is, where do we go from here? How do you evaluate something? How do you establish a price? How do you establish a value? So that's it, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you to all the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of patrons and thousands of patrons who support me and who've allowed me to build the cardboard empire that many of you never even buy anything. You just want to talk about personal things and business and finance and saving and good life choices. And then many other people don't do anything. They just want to watch the world burn. And you know, maybe the world does need a Joker.
So I figure I'd stop it there. Basically, the Joker reference, of course, watching the world burn. Now, here's the thing. Those of you who are been on my channel for a little while would know that I'm very much a proponent of kind of let this thing play out. So something like this is certainly up my alley. I'm not a patron, and even if you were a patron, you can't basically participate outside of the United States, so I wouldn't be eligible for this anyway. I also wouldn't pay $1,000 for it. However, as an observer, I was fascinated with the possibilities that this could do. And in a moment, I'll tell you what happened. Because as I said, this has already occurred. It was only a couple of days ago, but it's already happened. The outcome has occurred, and now we've seen at least the beginning. Because the subsequent video is called The Results of the Game. But there's a couple of specific things I wanted to kind of talk about real quick from this spot. I want you to think about what was said there. A lot of times when a lot of companies do stuff like this, and by the way, companies do stuff like this, even in the sports card realm. Because if you think about it, really, what you have here is an item that has a limited print run, or presumably limited print run. Again, if you don't trust the source, you could say, oh, well, why wouldn't they print more? So couldn't they print more? It's like, of course, they always could. It's going to depend on how much or how little stock you put in their word that it's a limited print run. But that applies to all collectibles. That's just a fact of life. But the reality is, so let's assume the print run is what it's stated to be, about 1,500. $1,000 a pop, that's $1.5 million. Now, in this case, you're getting a little bit more information than usually you would get. You are getting a print run, again, whether you believe it or not. You are getting a little bit of information about what it costs to create the packaging, which, as a consumer, you don't really care. But it is something notable in that the cost relative to the potential dollar amount that could be ascertained, is relevant. There's enough money there where if he sells a decent amount of those, he'll make his money in spades. But he is right. And this is a situation where it's very funny because he basically laid out the parameters of it. It is intentionally high. The expectation is that that would discourage a large number of people. And then all of a sudden you're entering into the realm of game theory. If you are a person who has $1,000, so in this scenario, the question you're asking yourself is, you're actually incentivized, if you think about it from a strategy perspective, you're incentivized for patience. And where, like I said, this does play into sports cards a little bit, is that we've seen games like this played. What do you think Panini did when it was doing Dutch auctions? All it is, a Dutch auction, if you're not familiar with what they did with that, they basically took some product, first off the line stuff and things of that sort, and they basically started off at a ridiculously high price. And they effectively said, okay, so we're going to sell this. You don't know how many there are really, but what happens is we're going to start off at this ridiculously high price, and if you have FOMO and you don't have the patience and you got to make sure you get it, well, then you're going to buy it at this ridiculously high price. But what happens is every couple of minutes, the price will drop, and it will continue to drop until one of two things happens. Either it sells out, in which case, if you were waiting to try to get a little bit cheaper and got a little greedy, you lose if you want the product. But if you're a person who bought in at the really high price, well, you locked in at the really high price. And the person who was willing to be patient and stretch it out as far as it could go will win because they'll buy the same box cheaper than you did. The other aspect of it as well, though, is that you are also kind of competing against the clock because it could also sell out. It could sell out, like I said, and end the game, or it could run its conclusion and not sell out, in which case, whatever product is left over, I don't know what Panini said they did with it. In the case of this one, it's a 24-hour period, and at the end of the 24-hour period, the unsold merchandise is supposed to be destroyed. Again, do you trust them to destroy it or not? I've not had any dealings with them. I can't claim one way or the other. The point is, it creates an interesting scenario. In this case, though, the scenario is that the price stays static. So it's $1,000 whether you buy it in the first 5 minutes or in the last 5 minutes. It makes no difference whatsoever. But strategically, you're still incentivized to wait as long as possible, because if you are able to hang in there and for whatever reason it does not sell out and you actually want the item, in this case you can only buy one or two. So it's not like you can buy 50 of them and try to hoard it. But if you're willing to hold out to the very end and buy one or two of the item, what you're trying to do actually is you're trying to strategically find out if it sells out. And if it does not sell out and you get your item in at the end, it costs you the same price. But what it does is it increases the likelihood that there's the least amount left. You basically get it right up to the line. You're hoping it doesn't sell out so that there's less of them in circulation, but you don't want to like lead in and basically, help it sell out early if it's going to. And the longer it lasts, the more likely you feel like, oh, maybe not a lot of people bought them. Again, it's a psychological play. If it lasts longer and longer and longer, you're thinking, oh, maybe people aren't buying it. Maybe if I grab something at the end here, if it's still available at the very end, maybe only a handful sold. Oh man, let me get one, because then it'll be rare. It'll be really even rarer than 1,500. It'll be like 100 copies or 50 copies or whatever. So you're like playing this psychological game with yourself. You're basically trying to hold out as long as possible because the longer it lasts, it means it didn't sell out. It means you've still got a shot at getting what should be a more limited item. Now, the problem is a lot of other people are going to be thinking the same thing too. So let me kind of share with you a little bit of the results. And like I said, I'll play the other video for you as well, talking a little bit about it. But the end result was that he sold a little over 1,300 of them. So it's one of those things where they actually sold most of the capacity. But what was interesting, and like I said, I'll include the link to all of these if you want to check it out. The second video to me is the more fascinating one because the first one just lays in the parameters, gives you some backstory. If you're interested in it, I'm including the link for that as well. But the more interesting one is the second one because the second one is where he's reviewing exactly what happened in terms of when people bought and how much they bought. And it basically created a curve where at the very beginning, the people that really, really wanted it bought early. Basically, the FOMO crowd bought early because they wanted to be sure that it didn't sell out before they got their copy. And then the people that went in later on, and you had a stagnant period in there where people were just kind of waiting it out, like I said, strategically trying to wait until the last possible moment, hoping against hope that a lot of people didn't buy because it's a scam, because it's, you know, it's just overpriced thing. And by the way, you can argue about whether that's true or not. You can still make that argument now. But I will actually show you now that we're a little bit past it. A few of them have sold as pre-sales. Now, pre-sale is a different conversation entirely. I'm happy to have it, but I'm not going to have it in this video. But some people were able to pre-sell that thing on eBay, and I'll show you kind of what some of that's gone for, or at least what the completed sales say. But I'll play a little bit of the video, the second one that's called The Results of the Game. And really, at the end of the day, it is a game for for these guys here because the amount of money in there is certainly significant for the average individual, but it's not a lot when you're buying a lot of stuff in wholesale. A couple of $100,000 or $1 million isn't going to change anything. But at the same time, it is very interesting what happens when somebody is offered the, a choice with whether they want to partake in something that it could be limited, maybe, maybe not. And it's at a high price point. So does that discourage enough people to make it more limited? Does that make it more valuable? Is there a secondary market? And at the end of the day, you are being given a little bit of information, but you have an incomplete set of information because the only piece of information you would have had during the 24-hour sale is whether it's sold out or not. And if the answer is no, you don't know if they sold one or if they sold 1,499 and they're just sitting on one. All you know is that it didn't sell out. So that incomplete piece of information makes things really interesting. The other aspect of it is that the only people eligible to buy it were people on the Patreon, which means you're already kind of a supporter of him anyway. But does that mean you necessarily buy, or you do participate as a Patreon for the boxes and other things that are available for that? Is it something where you look at it and go like, it's so niche. It's this promo with like this weird backstory and this whole thing. Is there value here? Yeah, there are some art cards in a fancy box and everything, but is that enough? And that's something that I can't answer for you. And some people are like, oh, they're like super fans and collectors of this game and they want anything related to it. Well, for them, it might still be interesting. Again, it's $1,000. That's a lot of money. So the question is, would that still be interesting or not? It's things like that that are always interesting to me. And again, in the sports card realm, it's not like we don't have stuff like this as well. The Montgomery Club from Topps. Where do you get your Sapphire? Montgomery Club members got first dibs. When they did the Topps Finest flashbacks, both in 2020 and 2021, who got first dibs? Montgomery Club members. You join the club, you have a chance to get that stuff first. Well, what happens if it basically sells out before it hits the general public? General public can't get it. You have to be part of the club. That's not fundamentally different than the Patreon idea. So my point is that he's not reinventing the wheel here. The only thing he did really was he decided to do it as kind of a social media experiment where he basically laid out the rules of the game, a game that's kind of stacked against you and a game that's almost playing you off of against each other just to see what will happen. And the more time, and you had some time to think about it and then kind of strategize, and do you collude with each other and try to figure it out, those of you who are on that, or do you kind of work against each other? It's a little, again, it's game theory. It's you trying to figure out like, what's the optimal move here? The optimal move may be just to stay out of it entirely, save $1,000 and maybe in the secondary market, it crashes and it's not worth anything. And you just avoided the whole thing entirely. Or maybe it works out, not a lot of them sell and there you go. But like I said, so the end result was, as I said, they sold about 1,300 of them, a little over 1,300 of them. So most of the available stock was sold. Some of it will get destroyed, but for the most part, it was available. So think $1.3 million on effectively a 24-hour sale on something that is very niche, very particular. It's literally selling a promo card and a little box with a couple of trinkets inside, basically generating $1,000 out of thin air. So very interesting. So let me play a little bit of the video here, the results of the game. If you're interested in it, I do recommend the second video in particular if you don't want the backstory, because there was an interesting breakdown of just how the sale happened and where the money went. And like I said, Montgomery Club for Topps, Dutch auctions for Panini, We're playing these games today. We're just not being so upfront about it. That's what made this interesting. It wasn't that what he did, because I've seen similar things to it. It was how overt and over the top is, and taking advantage of the fact that some people would debate and argue with it. And I found YouTube videos where people were debating and arguing with it and, yelling, this is a terrible idea. This is a great idea. This is a terrible idea. This is a great idea. Don't buy it. Buy it. And that conversation played right into it. And the thing is, in the first video, he said, the more people hate it and the more they talk about it, that's kind of the point. So mission accomplished from a publicity standpoint. He said it was a publicity stunt in the first video. You usually don't get that level of transparency where you do something provocative and you're acting as a provocateur. So that's kind of makes it interesting. So let me play the second video for you, a little bit of it, just a little bit of the clip, and then we'll finish this thing off.
And it's one of these things where you look at everything and the emotional response was achieved. It was what I wanted. My biggest fear of this, I didn't really give a shit whether the card sold out or if I sold 10 copies. It really, that's the Timmy mindset of focusing. What, did Rudy make 100 billion gazillion Zimbabwe dollars? The money, yeah, it's cool. It's nice. But that really wasn't the objective below the surface. A lot of people figured it out, though. The objective was to get people so emotionally left field slapped by Chuck Norris that it would literally cause their washer and dryer to break and be forced to call handyman Rudy services. It forced people to talk about it because it was so absurd, they had to. The human response was, OMG, holy shit, what is this idiot scam artist doing? Wolf of Magic, just scumbag. I gotta make a video. I gotta tell people. This is permanent damage to LSS in the game. That was my biggest fear, was that nobody was upset and nobody said anything. That was my biggest fear. And that's what gave me the biggest anxiety. But man, the rush in watching it and seeing the message boards in the markets and all these people sending me screenshots of these private groups and everything on these Facebooks and Tumblrs and Silk Roads and Backpage and Craigslist and Rudy List, and it felt so good. And it made the game worthwhile. And it's important that people need to understand the way the chessboard works. And this also, the results of the sales, reinforce that people are so vested and passionate about Flesh and Blood that they literally were making decisions on the timeline based on what they knew about supply. In other words, one of the transitive property of elimination and things you know and unknown, based on knowing A equals B, and based on knowing what C is, and if you know C is A, you can move the numbers around and create your own analogies, and you can create your own subset of derivative data. Big fancy words, makes you sound smart, right? And that's what made people say, okay, we'll know if the sale makes it, it didn't sell out. So anything that doesn't sell the card out is a win. That means anyone, even if it, which turned out that little bit, about 10% less than selling out worked. And of course, some of the cards are, I can't sell, and there are some cards that I'm going to make sure are in the destroyed pile because some of them have really bad dings on the edge, or a few of them that were on top of the pile and at the bottom of the pile were kind of yucky. A few of the cases had some weird printing issues. And again, there's going to be some variance and everything, but that's what I was focused on. I was focused on the market's response and people giving me feedback, not on the sales and the price. That was the smoke and mirror. The objective was how far and wide can we make creepy scumbag Rudy persona, character, actor, crisis actor, there's a keyword to get some people triggered. How much can we push to get people outside the bubble of fab to discuss this insane, scummy move? How far can we get the reach to spread outside the normal people who would never ever hear about Flesh and Blood, that would never ever care about it, but what they will care about is that Rudy guy that hate online, and you ain't gonna believe what he's planning this time. That is the golden goose. That's the Da Vinci Code of the Rubik's Cube of how to solve things. It's really about something greater here, folks.
So I edited out a chunk of that because then he goes on to give a little bit of a side story to it. By the way, as he was walking, if you look there was that little chart that kind of played into that graph that I was talking about, where a lot of people bought at the beginning and then it spiked up at the end as people reached the last 30 minutes or so and spiked up in sales. Again, you can question whether it's on the level, the numbers. That's not the point. The point for me was, as an exercise, it was interesting. The potential results of the exercise were interesting. As a market observer, it's interesting. How does this apply to sports cards? Well, this specific story doesn't necessarily apply. However, and this is important, games like this are being played at companies in the sports card realm. I gave you guys already the example. Montgomery Club. Topps was doing their own little experiment with a collector's club where we're giving you early access to a bunch of this stuff. First off the line. What is first off the line? Give people online exclusive, give them a window to grab it. Scarcity, shoe manufacturers, they do limited releases, limited runs, the sneakers app. Like this is all over the, collectible realms, fashion realms, all over this place. Like these games are being played. It's rare that they'll put it right in front of your face, lay out the parameters of the game at the beginning, call it a game at the beginning, and then let it play out. And like I said, I'll show you a couple of the pre-sales of the stuff that's sold on eBay the last little while, because again, it's only been a couple of days since this thing happened, but I'll give you a couple of examples of it. But the point is, the success or failure of this specific game isn't the point. The whole collectible card game element of it, you don't care about it, cool, that's fine, doesn't matter. The point is that there are companies out there, and now that Fanatics is going to be coming in with its licensees and everything, Panini, Topps, Upper Deck, all these. They come up with different ways of gamifying a lot of this stuff and creating the scenarios of scarcity, quote unquote scarcity. The point of this thing is to elicit a reaction. In this case, Rudy specifically said, "I want you to react." The only thing I'm worried about is that you don't react. The only thing I'm worried about is that you don't get mad, or that you don't care, or that you don't make videos about it or talk about it, whatever the case may be. So when 2020 was going on and people were complaining that people were standing in line at Target and and waiting in line to get these blasters because, oh my God, this market's going crazy and everything. Why doesn't Topps and Panini just print more stuff and make it, fix it? You don't think the people in the message board and the forums and all that talking about this is like, it means it made the product feel like it was rare. It wasn't rare. They printed plenty, but it made it feel like it was because you couldn't get any. Some people really hated that, but other people were like doubly determined to the point they paid secondary market prices for something they fully acknowledged. It's like, what? This is ridiculous. Why should I have to pay this? And yet you did. The only reason the secondary market existed is because you did. If you had really not paid for it, the secondary market would have collapsed and it would have gone back to normal, and you'd have cases of blasters at Walmart and Target. The game is being played whether you feel like you're an active participant or not. The game is being played whether you want to participate or not. Now, there's always the folks that are like, "Oh, well, I collect vintage. Great, who cares?" But like, good for you. The fact of the matter is that if you're outside of the market, why the hell have you been watching this video? The point isn't about the folks where it doesn't apply. People who want to open a new product, it applies to. People where these games are being played, it applies to. This was just a very fun kind of exercise for those of us who got to observe, because we're looking at it being played out blatantly in front of you. The parameters and the rules of the game are being laid out. You're actually getting more information you normally get. And then, all right, let's see how you respond. And people did. It sold most of the allocation. Kind of interesting how that works out. So what I'll do is I'll quickly share with you. So this is the item, and I'll share it with you from our friends at Sell the Peak here. So this is the item. It's Flesh and Blood promo kit, FAB. You have to search it under these different search terms, but if you do Alpha Investments, Rudy Alpha Investments, anniversary card, it's the second anniversary of the game. That was part of the whole promotional element. So this was a pre-order kind of deal. Remember, it's $1,000 to buy one. $2,000 if you buy two. So $1,780 US, best offer accepted. Okay, great. So this is some other stuff. This is one of the pictures that was related to a different product that he had. So this one, promo kit, $1,500 best offer, $1,549 best offer, $1,800 best offer, $1,997 best offer. This is for one. So remember that. This is for one. You could have gotten two for $2,000 if you were part of that already. Scrolling down a little bit. So nothing more on this screen. And I did see a couple of other ones, the ones that would be $1,500, $1,600, $1,700. So again, these are early days. It only happened, the whole thing only transpired a couple of days ago. October 11th was the follow-up video. So basically yesterday was when the follow-up video came on that I'm recording this. Like I said, the interesting thing for me was just how it would play out. I was genuinely curious, and I do enjoy watching the little market dynamics of things play out, and when people decide to do games like this. You can bet Rudy from Alpha Investments is going to try something similar again in the future. And there's a good chance they'll solicit a kind of a reaction. Again, in the sports card world, no one feels that because this collectible card games is a different realm. But my point was that there's market dynamics being played out every day in the sports card market. We just call it something else. We call it Panini Dutch Auctions. We call it the Montgomery Club. We call it a variety of different allocation schemes. Fanatics is going to come up with his own version of it. They're going to be sitting in a boardroom trying to come up with their own version of the game. The print runs are going to differ. The product's going to differ. How they're going to distribute it, how they're going to allocate it, how they're going to... Panini did this when they started printing a bunch of parallels. How do I print a bunch of stuff without letting you think you're printing a bunch of stuff? The whole thing has been a game. And again, for the consumer, it just means your job, at this point, your job should be to pay attention to what your aspect of it is. The people that were playing this game, to a certain degree, at least understood what they were getting into. Because if they're following along and they're patrons anyway, they at least understand that, hey, this is what's going on with it. So it became a question of, okay, is there enough secondary market interest? That is yet to be determined. Still too soon. I don't have enough data there to be able to tell you. I can tell you the handful of people that were buying there are paying, 50, 60, or 70%, maybe even almost double what they were going for. So for those people, the person who sold for nearly $2,000 made their money back. Even with fees and everything, they did all right. They were basically able to get the other one almost for free. And that doesn't mean they can't sell the other one down the road, assuming they bought two. And, a good chunk of people, I think 70% of the people in the data set that Rudy covered in that other video bought two. So it's one of those things where they've got at least one other copy, assuming they sell one. So it gives them the opportunity. Does that, in a year, will it be worth $1,000? Will it be worth $5? Will it be worth $10,000? I have no idea. The likelihood is it'll be worth probably about what it started at or lower. There's a good, reasonable chance once the FOMO people get out of the way and buy their thing early, it'll probably sit. But for the absolute diehard who has to have everything related to flesh and blood, that may be the holy grail. Even though it's like not 5 copies, it's still rare enough that if certain people hang on to it and don't do anything with it, who actually wanted one and were willing to pay $1,000 for the privilege when it first came out, it may not go back on the market. We'll have to see. The point is that sports cards are not immune to this. Scarcity games are not immune to this. Stuff like this happens. It's just instead of the manufacturer doing it. And again, even if you're a secondary market person, you're like, oh, I collect vintage. Okay. Well, if you ever down the road see that certain vintage sets and certain things start kind of drying up as far as supply, when there was plenty of supply earlier, that's usually people hoarding it. That's happened in the vintage market. There have been spikes. Go back and look up 2016. There were certain vintage cards that suddenly shot up. Oh, but I don't collect in high grade. That's fine. The supply on a lot of these stuff can dry out. Stuff can go into collections, just not come out. That means it's not available. So if you need a copy, price can still go up. And again, I don't know why you're this far into the video on market dynamics. If you're in the vintage realm, market dynamics should be almost irrelevant to you. Just buy your damn card. Be done with it. But that's kind of the thing. I get a laugh. That's why I say down the road, I'll make a video on kind of gatekeepers and stuff like that. People that kind of want to chime in and say, well, I don't collect that, so it doesn't matter to me. So then why are you commenting? Then you don't have an opinion, and frankly, your opinion's irrelevant. But thanks for sharing. If you're not a participant or you're not paying attention to it, you don't really have an opinion. Or you say words that sound like an opinion, but it's not an informed one. There's some of us who do enjoy kind of watching the game of it being played out, though. There are some of us who do enjoy watching it burn a little bit, and it is fun when we've got some provocateurs who are willing to play it. At the end of the day, is it a scam? Sort of, but also no. You knew what the rules of the game were in this case. You're usually not so lucky. Those are people that are buying a lot of the new product. The game's being played. We just call it something else. Anyway, just kind of a fun second half of that video that I want to have. I got a kick out of it, so I wanted to kind of share it a little bit. I will cut it down a little bit, so probably you won't be seeing the full version of this video, but I'll cut it down a little bit just to have some fun. Anyway, what did you think about this? Even if you're outside of the collectible card game realm, it is a little different. It was kind of interesting seeing somebody try, like a really, this is basically a market experiment / kind of like seeing what kind of hype you can generate. In this case, it's kind of negative hype, if you really think about it. It's like, I want people so mad they talk about it just because they're furious. It's kind of fun. Anyway, so that's it. Other videos on the channel. If there's anything in particular, any other topics you would like to see discussed or anything like that, if you got any thoughts about that, you can certainly leave it in the comments. Comments about this, comments about anything else. I'll always welcome that. Otherwise, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Would appreciate it. Live streams. Fridays, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have another one this week where we'll talk about some more stuff. And I've got an idea for a BIC episode, so we'll do an audio-only episode where I'll have a little bit of fun. We'll get back to the more collector-centric topics. I like to touch on the market stuff from time to time because it's fun too. Anyway, so that's it for me this time around. Thanks very much.